Hey, everybody, and welcome to yet another NOVA Scribes. It is lovely to have you. My name is Brian. Tonight, we are pleased to have with us Salah. And Salah, you're going to have to pronounce your last name for me. How do you do that?
Salah Elleithy. Yeah,
Elleithy. I did not want to
Elleithy.
get that wrong.
Yeah.
Salah Elleithy. So, a little bit about Salah. He is a leadership, coactive, and a professional coach and a learning facilitator. He helps teams, leaders, and individuals balance clarity with action. For the last couple of decades, he has focused on coaching and growing individuals, teams, and leaders. He's also an ICF certified professional certified coach at PCC, and he works with individuals, teams, and leaders on getting clear on their values, goals, and identifying strengths, and continuing to build on them to help them achieve their goals while honoring their values and purpose. So, Salah, it is lovely to have you here. What have you got for us tonight?
All right. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate the invitation. Yeah, so I'm gonna share. I have some slides to just structure the conversation, but I see that we don't have many folks here, so hopefully this will be a dialogue. So again, thank you for inviting me. My name is Salah Elleithy, and I today I'm gonna talk about visual signals, and I title this. This talk or this presentation visual signals because this is a visual facilitation group, and I also happen to be a facilitator, not necessarily the type of facilitator who use markers to draw and illustrate, but I facilitate in different ways. So I want to share some ways that may be useful to the group here. Here's I wanted to start with this question here. What's the difference between a graphic facilitator and an agile facilitator? And this seems like a dad joke alert type of coming here.
Are you looking for an answer here, or are you going to tell it to me?
Well, this is a no, this is kind of the setup for the joke. I'm not doing a very good job, but as you can see here, the graphic facilitator draws people out, and
Mhm.
an agile facilitator draws people in. Honestly, I know this. This is really a job of every facilitator, not just a graphic facilitator or agile facilitator or facilitator in general. If you work with groups and help them diverge and converge on ideas or decisions, then that's the work of a facilitator. Okay, so I wanted to some of you might have seen this before, but if you look at the before and after here, what's different? What do you see as a different between the before and after? They both say the same thing.
Hmm. I mean, it looks like they're thinking different things. Is that right?
Yeah, they're thinking different things. Um, But and then they say, I'm glad we all agree, right? So they agree on some things, but they're not thinking the same thing. And usually that's again visuals or visual signals, or whether it's illustration or as I will go through a few tools here, mapping can help us see the same thing, right? So that's the idea is as a facilitator, our work is usually happen in the middle, right? Trying to figure out how to get the group from seeing different things to seeing the same things. And as we know, as facilitators, and especially graphic facilitator, we know that people see things, um, you know, when they see visual things visually, they can start to see the same thing rather than, if you are sitting around the table or on a conference call or Zoom meeting with no video, like some of us have been seeing in the last several years, um, people may talk but and have this energy, and everybody's talking about some things, but they don't usually talk about the same thing because of they don't see it. So what are visual signals? So if you look at this slide here, you can see that we have visual signals everywhere. Everywhere we go, whether it's at the grocery store, you see things visually. These shelves at the grocery store, They tell us that the shelves are either full or have need to be reshelved or restocked. We see signs on the road that visually indicate what we supposed to do, whether it's going one way or do not enter. We see visual signals on schedules or airport or train stations. So there are a lot of different signals that we see. Um, Even with as facilitators, we even can sense from the tone of voice of the participants in the group or emotion, facial expressions. These are all visual signals that we see as facilitators. So here's the complete picture here for the the picture that I showed earlier. So I want to ask you a question and maybe put it in the chat, the number. Where do you think, I probably already give you the answer earlier, but let's see if everyone is paying attention. Where do you think facilitator work live? And let me see. I don't know if I have the, oh, here it is, the chat.
Amanda says 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm. Okay. 2 and 3, 2 and 3,
Got another one
um,
for 2 and 3?
2 and 3. Yeah, so I think we all agree that the most of the work happens in the middle for facilitator. We may get fulfillment at the end because finally people see they're on the same page or see things or aligned on what they should do next. But we sort of own or the process in the middle to help them get there. Uh, All right, so the first tool I want to introduce, how many of you here are familiar with Kanban? This idea of, yeah, so everybody. Um, the idea, as Brian mentioned in the description earlier, is or in the meetup, the um, Kanban is used for teams, right? From an agile context, Kanban is basically a visual board. In fact, the Kanban is a Japanese word or it came from lean manufacturing and lean software development, and it translates to signal to visual card. And a visual card is basically a card is a signal how things are going, where we are with our progress. From a facilitation standpoint, this is something that I use often is to have a board set up for the things that we're going to talk about during a workshop or a meeting or a facilitation workshop to see for the participants to see where we are in the process. Um, as you know, people sometimes get lost as facilitators. We have to continue to maybe orient the group of what's going to happen then throughout the workshop or facilitation meeting, we have to figure out, where we are currently because people can get lost throughout the session and then wrap it up at the end. So this is a way to signal where we are as a group, where we are with the process. So if we use this as part of this presentation here, maybe we have an intro. Brian did an intro, so this would move across the board here to done. What we'll cover, we will be covering 4 different tools that might be relevant to facilitators and Agile context. I'm going to talk a little bit, touch briefly on Agile context, but then the facilitation context is where we're going to be focused on the most. Um, and then going over the tools one by one and then just wrap up. So one of the things, how many of you familiar with like the use of like Agile development or have been on teams where they use Agile? Okay. So I want to just hear a little bit. How has been your experience with the group working in an Agile approach or in a way that using Agile practices?
I mean, for me,
Amanda?
it's been pretty good. Amanda, do you want to say? Do you want to go first next?
I think it depends on the team.
Hmm.
We've had some teams that have been that have had done agile for quite a bit, and they get it. And then there have been teams that this is very new to them, and they've had and I've had them resist it. And so yes, the individuals do help. Um, is that Is that the question? It's like what my experience
Yeah.
has been with. Yep. Cool.
Yes. And Brian, you were short and sweet with you say it was pretty good. What was good about it?
Yeah, I've used it with engineers with kind of big programs, and the
Yeah.
hard part of it was kind of resetting from what they were used to, which is sort of waterfall design and engineering of big projects, and getting them out of the mindset. It's like, no, we're going to experiment, we're going to fail, it's going to be okay, it's going to be light. The
Mm,
idea is that not to dial in on the perfect shot with the arrow, it's to shoot and then move the target.
hmm. Yeah. Anyone else on the want to share? So so is it for Kanban, you may have seen a visual board that the team go over during their planning session maybe, or during their check-in meetings, which sometimes they're called a daily stand-up or daily huddles. You may have seen the team at the end of the work cycle. They may have look at the work that they've done and review it with the group or the product folks. But this is the way that I'm using this in a facilitation context is usually I sometimes facilitate, a lot of times actually I do a lot of like discovery session where, people are coming together to um, figure out what is the problem that we're trying to solve. What are the people who we are going to focus on, right? And sometimes the discovery session can go in a lot of, circles, or people can start to talk in different path. And the way I tend to focus the group is by having sort of a Kanban board. Here's what we're going to be talking about. Here are the topics. So it's not necessarily this board or Kanban is only used when you're doing some development work, like, an agile team or a development team where they're building something, building a software or a product. It's also something at the micro level when you're facilitating a meeting or working with a group, you can stack up all the topics or the things that we're going to be talking about. And throughout the meeting, you can show how things are progressing. And that way you can start to refocus the meeting when things are going in a different direction. Again, something visual. And the signal here that is the question, what's happening right now, right? So that could be a signal or sort of a clue for the participants, for the group, but also for the facilitators. Because, if you're facilitating a large group, sometimes things get messy, or if you don't have the luxury of co-facilitating with someone else or having a group of facilitator working together, and you're on your own, this could be a good visual way to represent how, what's going on in the group. Um, how any thoughts about how you might use this in your work or facilitation?
Yeah, I like it as a way of sort of tracking what work we're doing, what's in the pipeline, what is it that we're currently working on, and what's completed.
Mm. Amanda, I seem to think that you're also doing some facilitation around maybe discovery or um, like product stuff.
So I help quite a few teams with just setting up so that I would design the Miro boards for them because I've been an agile coach for a while.
Mm.
And so, um, and just taking them through the first bit. Sometimes it's decision making, problem solving. It just depends what they need. And yes, you're right. The visuals absolutely help because I found that as people start thinking, their minds tend to wander away from the process. And so when the visual is there to help them guide them through the process very well. And so it creates the space for them to then go and think. Then rather than trying to keep track of things, the visual helps you help them to keep track. It's like it removes the noise of trying to remember where you're at all the time.
Mhm.
Hmm.
That's my experience.
Yeah. And you're pointing to sort of a maybe a side benefit or an interesting idea that may not be as obvious is the cognitive load. If you were constantly like thinking where we are in this process, people tend to like get distracted by, okay, I'm lost. How do I reorient? Or it's almost like a navigation recalibrating throughout the journey. So that's an important piece of it that it may not be visible or obvious using this board. Any other thoughts before we move to the next? All right. So another area here, again, like as an agile coach, Amanda, you've probably seen this, the idea of getting stuck, right? So in meetings, again, in from an agile team perspective, the team can get the work stuck in progress. And, once we see that something has been in the same queue or the same column or the same place for some time, we tend to try to see what is blocking this work item, right? So similarly in the facilitation meetings, I'm sure you've seen in meetings where things get stuck and uh, it's not moving. So again, that board can help us. Okay, we've been spending a lot of time on this topic that's been in progress for some time now, and what is missing here. So it triggers or indicates that maybe we're not really clear on some things. Maybe there are some missing data or information that we need to find or research. Um, so again, it gives the group, the same visual to be able to see that, okay, there's a bottleneck. We've been spending a lot of time on this topic. What's going on? What's getting in the way of us, reaching or landing this topic? Um, any thoughts about this idea, or how you see it in your meetings or workshops?
Sometimes I see bottlenecks show up if we're doing, like, say, a clustering activity,
Mm,
where you've got a lot of ideas, a lot of sticky notes up on the wall, and where the bottleneck tends to happen is where the massive clusters tend to take place, right? And it's like there where it's like, okay, well, can we subdivide this up into other areas? And that might be a little bit more of like a bottleneck on the thought process more than it is a bottleneck on in a supply chain or a manufacturing process. But I think, to some extent that may also be true.
yeah. Yeah, I've done what we call user story writing workshop, and I mean, they may be familiar with this, and maybe Brian, you as well. The idea of you bring the team into into the room or into the space, and we start to brainstorm what are some stories based on the problem that we're trying to solve or the needs of the customer. And a lot of times, people are staring at each other. They don't know where to start. Or we spend too much time on coming up with ideas and then sort of run out of the time, and we don't get to land on sort of getting to the essence of what we need to deliver. Um, so having some sort of, again, like the signal is here, what's going on right now in this particular moment, and also where are we stuck, or where are we spending most of our time, and is that a good use of our time at this point?
Hmm.
Any other thoughts from folks on the Zoom? And I'm not seeing you, so I don't know Um, if you have any comments here.
And if you like, you can also drop your comments into chat. We'll read them out. I think you're good to go.
All right. Okay, so another tool that we use in with teams, again, trying to, I mentioned the user story writing. Usually we try to find out who is the audience, who are we building this for, right? So a tool or a technique that we use is called empathy mapping. Empathy mapping has different variation actually. There's a this is developed by Dave Gray. He wrote a book called Game Storming,
Mm.
and the idea is really, I like this simple variation where it's just these four quadrants. Maybe because I'm a consultant and like four quadrant things, but two by two. But the thing is like, what do people say, right? What are they saying about our product or our, feature? What are they actually doing? Does what they say and what they do align, or they say something and they do something else? And then the thinking and feeling is something that we basically infer from the observation or this what they say and what they do. Again, this is in the context of teams, but in the context of meetings, this could be sort of um, checking the vibe, if you will, or how is the weather or in the meeting? Are people saying things, and what are they saying? Um, and maybe what are they doing? People sometimes, I'm sure you've been in meetings where people have their laptops open, they checking their phone, they checking something else, they're not engaged. So that just gives you like sort of a temperature of the room. How are things in the room? And maybe we need to pivot or adjust our approach to engage the rest of the group here. So this is again from a team's perspective, who are we building this for? But from a facilitator's perspective, as a tool, it's usually, or at least the way I think of it, and the way that I've used it, sometimes either and it doesn't have to be like something that you build, you sit down and just, write these down. It's something that you can just make a mental note of, but it gives you a structure on how you can do that. So here's a sort of a use case from a facilitator's perspective. Um, Again, a lot of the meetings, people may be disengaged, but they also another is misaligned. You may have had the experience of bringing people in the room. You knew that they were the right people, or you thought that they were the right people, and they come into the room, and there's a lot of decisions that they need to make, but you don't have the right people in the room to make those decisions, and that will cause delay in the process. So the way that I think of this as a tool to read the room, because I think reading the room can be very abstract in a way, in a sense that and at the same time, when you're facilitating, engaged in facilitation, whether you're drawing or whether you're using post-it notes or flip chart, or even in Zoom where you're showing some visuals, it's hard to be paying attention to everything all at once. It's like you have multiple screens that you're trying to switch between, and it's not easy. Um, so that's the signal. How is the conversation going in the meeting? So I want to check in with the group here. Like, how do you usually detect that things are going well or not going so well in a meeting or a workshop that you're facilitating?
Yeah, this can be a tricky one, especially because body language can be really easily misread. So I noticed that you've got, for example, crossed arms. It could be that they're sitting underneath the air conditioning. So it,
Both.
it it can be hard, especially if you're online too. One thing, and this is, I think some people I've seen have used something like this, but something that I like is something like the mood meter, which
Mm,
you could think of as like a periodic table of emotions, So red is low pleasantness and high energy, moving towards the yellow, that's a little bit, more pleasantness and high energy. And then if we move down, low energy and high pleasantness is down here. And then low energy and low pleasantness is here. So you're like offering people a tool like that and just asking them, hey, where are you on something like this? Another one that I like is called the sheep scale. I don't know if you've seen this one before. This one might be particularly helpful in, places that have a lot of sheep. Amanda, I'm thinking about you here. Um, so, or is that New Zealand? It's probably New Zealand. Um, anyway, so which sheep are you? And then my favorite one, since you asked, is the Prince scale. On a scale of one to Prince, where are you? I tend to kind of hang out in this area. So anyway, the bottom line is I like to ask people. Hi, Darshika. Nice to see you.
Hello. Yeah,
Hello.
that's these are all good tools. Um, I yeah, no, I like visuals. Again, like pictures or maybe a quick poll in the middle of the meeting to just gauge the temperature. Because again, I mean the some meetings could be we're talking about like workshops where sometimes you have like a 2 hour planning session or maybe a strategy planning or something that requires an extensive block of time. And if you see the energy dropping, maybe it's time to take a break or a
Mhm.
stretch or something, right? Um, Amanda, do you have any thoughts on this?
Um, one technique that I have admired is when going through the visual signals on a board. Uh, are we finished here or are we not? Is to give people a scale so that and they can put it on a Miro board or just put it in the chat on a scale of 1 to 5. How far are we on getting the outcome of this particular block? Um,
Mm,
and and if you see people on really different ends of the scale, that's really good to then start asking questions. Yeah, just that check in at each point. It's really good. I think it.
mm. Yeah, checking in is something important, especially if the meeting is has a lot of perspectives, and maybe people need to sort of take a minute and then come back and continue. But a lot of times, as we see in especially in organizations where things need to happen really fast, um, sometimes we want to make a decision right now and right away. Um, so people get rushed to reach that point, even though maybe they're not ready or they don't have enough information to make the decision. Um, and I know a guy who presented accelerated team decision at some point. Maybe can check his presentation. Wink, wink, Brian.
We can do that, sure.
Yeah. All right. So anybody on the in the chat or anything about
I
how
think you're
teams think?
clear. I think you can keep rolling.
All right. This might be going fast.
Mhm.
Um, so the next tool, how many are familiar with impact mapping?
Oh,
Okay.
this is a new one. Oh, Amanda, you've seen it? Okay, cool.
Um, yeah, so the again, the impact mapping is something that help us connect the dots. A lot of times we, especially whether it's again with teams, we have a lot of deliverables, we have a lot of work items that we need to deliver, and sometimes it's hard to connect the dots or the pieces, between maybe the tasks and then the goals and the people who are asking for these things. Um, so this gives us a good visual to connect all of it together. And it again, if you look at the map here, the impact map, it starts with the why and the goal, and then the who actor, and then the impact, and then deliverable, which is the what, the how, and the what. A lot of time, teams that I've worked with, and I'm sure maybe Amanda, you've seen this, and Brian as well, like the idea of how and what, how are we going to do this is always, or usually the question, how are we going to do this, and what are we going to do, right? So they live in this execution mindset, which is still important because we have to deliver things and we have to execute. But then the why and who are sometimes missing or oftentimes missing because, again, spending too much time trying to figure out why we're doing something or who is going to be doing it sometimes is considered as not doing the thing that we're supposed to do, right? But again, like that's always I like to to look at things from the perspective of clarity and action, right? So do we have clarity and are we able to take action? And so um, sometimes we need to design some small action or small steps to get more clarity, but at the same time, when we take some action, we have to come back and see how is that fit into or connect with the why and the who. Um, so again, why are we doing this? In the context of a meeting, again, how many times have you been in meetings where you or people didn't know why they're there? Maybe most of us probably have seen that, right? You show up, and a lot of times, sometimes meetings, they say one thing, this is what we want to get out of the meeting, right? This is the why. But then when you are there to facilitate the meeting, the why is completely different thing, right? So again, in the context of the facilitator, this could be a way to prepare why is this meeting important? Who are the actors? Who are the people who are going to be there? Who are the participants? What are the impact? What are the maybe to maybe use a variation of like what's the impact or the outcome, the desired outcomes that we need to walk away with? And the follow-up is the deliverables. What we're going to do next that will help us get closer to the goal or to the why that we're doing. So I really like mind maps in general, because again, they are good thinking tools and they connect the dots and you can start to see patterns and see things that you may have not thought of if you were just thinking without visuals. Um, all right, so a question for the group here. So Brian, you this is the first time you've seen the impact map, you said?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I want to add, Amanda added into chat. I like to add, how will we know when we are successful, which is to say the measure that's tied to the outcome. It's a great add, Amanda. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, and I mean, every one of those tools it could be its own presentation or discussion. But again, I want to give some tools that have been used already in the Agile space or with Agile teams, but may or may not have been used with the facilitators and visual facilitators. Um, so, all right. So here's again, this is the an example of the impact map. You have a goal. What is it? The goal it's maybe you have the goal is to grow some business or have a measurable outcome for something for the team. What are the actors? Who are the people affected by this? And then the impact, we want them to come back frequently, stay longer. And then deliverables, what is the updates that we need to do and special offers, maybe some features or some deliverables, and then we break them down to smaller work items. Sometimes we refer to them as stories. And so this is sort of how they connect, how do the dots connect. But I'm curious, like if you were to use something like this it, from a facilitator stance, what might be a why for a workshop or a facilitation engagement that you get asked to do.
I'm happy to give you one if you like.
Yeah, go ahead.
Unless, Amanda, if you've got one, do you have one? Nope. So I recently had to help the government services portion of a much larger organization, a multinational organization, kind of chart their way ahead as they spun off and became their own corporate entity.
Hmm. So okay, and so the why is to this have a standalone or
Yeah, the purpose of the facilitation was to have to come to alignment and understanding around what is going to be our new corporate identity.
okay. So that could be the goal of the meeting, align on corporate identity, right? So
Hmm.
that might be the why. And then actors are basically the participants who are the stakeholders. Maybe there are some certain folks that need to be part of this conversation so that we can, um, agree on some of the impact that we want to have in the future. And then, what are the next steps? So having this having this connection can help the group see, okay, how does it all connect to each other, and then maybe we need to iterate or build on that.
Yeah.
Um, Amanda, you said that you've tried or you're familiar with it. I'm sure you've used it with teams or facilitation.
Yeah, sometimes it's interesting how the deliverables, um, if you just see it, if you give it the backward lens, how it actually ties in with some other actors. So you might have one deliverable and multiple actors on the same deliverable, and that's when things get sometimes a little bit more complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, having different sometimes actors or sometimes if familiar, we use persona or, um, basically the audience, um, mul impacts can satisfy multiple people, right? Multiple actors. So yeah, it gets complex if, a lot of different lines that you may draw, or maybe you have like some persona or actor that represent, and because again, like personas refer to a group of people. Maybe it's not specific person, maybe it's a group. So let's say you have a meeting and a line on corporate branding, as I mentioned, and you have actors could represent be instead of having actors, specific participants or names, it could be teams. Like maybe you need marketing some representation, or you need sales, or you need accounting, or product, whatever the different groups. So that way you have a representation from each of those groups and not just one specific person, because it can definitely get very complicated if you're mapping it by individuals. Um, all right, so again, the signal for this, again, how do we connect the dots? How do things fit together? A lot of times we see puzzle pieces, but it's hard to figure out how the whole puzzle fit together. So this helps in that way, in fitting the puzzles together and seeing the big picture. Um, all right, so I think this is the last one here. Again, um, this one was a little bit harder for me to figure out, using it from a facilitator's perspective, but it could be a tool for facilitators who want to see the journey, like the user journey, right? So story mapping, popularized by Jeff Patton. He wrote a book about it called User Story Mapping. Um, and the problem that teams were facing was that they have this list of things that they want to deliver. We call it backlog, right? So the product backlog with all the different work items that we want to build. And what ends up happening is we start to build things in this sequence, or as like a flat list of things, but we don't see the other dimension, how these work items, connect or fit together. So the idea here is that we have a different dimensions. We have the dimension of the breadth. Okay, so what's the journey of the user? What are they supposed to be doing to get to this goal or this task? And then the depth is, what are the things that we need to do? Maybe there are some more details that we need to get into. So again, usually a lot of times we focus on depth with teams, like they will go, down the rabbit hole very quickly and they want to go into the details. But I think it's best to figure out what's the end-to-end journey first. Okay, what's the user journey look like, or as this is called, a story map. um, if you think even movies, they use like these index cards to plan out the movies, all the different scenes, and then within the scenes there may be some details that they need to add. Um, like in this case here, this is a personal example that that is usually given here. So let's say get ready for work, you may be, the journeys like wake up, exercise, shower, prep meal. So different things. And then within the prep meal, you may need to go more details. Cook some food or prepare some food for the next day, pack, store, put it in the fridge. Um, I know this is sort of, very like not most I don't do this, but I know some some people that I work with who do this. They plan out their meal plan for lunch for the whole week, and they stack it up in their fridge, and they and they're good to go. But so this one I kind of was thinking, how do I use this in a facilitators from a facilitator context? So maybe
Mm.
you can as someone with a visual thinking, what's coming up for you as you look at the user story mapping?
Yeah, this is really good. So I've seen something similar to this that sometimes it's called a journey map or a customer journey map.
Mhm.
The thing is with a journey map is typically what you do is you don't take a look at the behind the curtain processes that are there. So a classic example is if I'm going to fly on a plane, my experience as a customer would be, buying my ticket, arriving at the airport, checking my bag, going through security, et cetera, et cetera. I would not have, as part of the journey map, the CRM that the airline uses to find me and knows all my preferences and my frequent flyer number. I would not have the policy of the TSA agent. I would not have the conveyor belts of the luggage. What I like about this is that, just because of that line on the left, you can go as deep as you want to into the details of it.
Yeah,
I also like how it's divided up along the user journey at the top and then into the tasks and details. So to me, this provides a little bit more granularity than a traditional journey map would.
yeah, yeah. I think the customer journey map usually when I work with the user experience team members or colleagues, they use it for something a little different, but it's still kind of it fits into this as well. But they sort of map out the journey of the customer and then highlight like where the pain points are, and then these are the pain points that we now, want to solve, or these are the problems that we may address based on like the prioritization by the product team or the leadership. Um, but again, the idea of this is shared understanding, creating shared understanding. If you remember that picture I showed earlier, where everyone is looking at having this thought bubble, but the thought bubble has something different, right?
Mhm.
And they're all saying, I think we all agree, right? But they're thinking different things. And so having this visual or view can help the group say, oh, we are looking at the same things. So what's missing here? Where are the gaps? And how can we plug in the gaps and so that we have a bigger, a more holistic or fuller picture. Um, and I like the term that Jeff Patton used usually is like shared understanding. A lot of times with teams, um, it used to be in the traditional, and a lot of companies are still doing this, whether they develop things in, sequential order, where, the analyst does some requirement gathering, pass it on to the developer, then developer does some things, the developer pass it on to the tester does something, pass it on to the operations or deployment, and so the shared understanding is done through passing documents, right? Here is a
Mhm.
document. If I give you a document and wrote some things and I say, here, Brian, this is what I have. You read the documents, you will have probably a different understanding from what I intended, right? So the idea of shared understanding is having that conversation that we all have understand what we mean and what we are imagining and why using these
Mhm.
visuals. Um, any other thoughts, Amanda? You have any? Uh, I see
I'm
you're
sorry.
thinking.
Um, I've seen two extremes of this. I've seen a whole design. blueprint
Mm,
where it takes the details and casts different lenses on them, from different roles perspective. So people from the back end, people in the middle, people that are customer facing for those same points, touch points for the customer. And it it gets very gnarly, but for people that like to see the connections of what could possibly be affecting different areas, like business analysis in some way,
mm,
it's fascinating because you can see, um, maybe the platform is slow, and then the customer is saying, "Hey, this website's not working." And I'm just using a stupid example, but I think that just seeing how different one touch point can have different effects, and you might see something that if you put it out in that big blown out way, the design, you might see what is affecting something else. So
mm.
that's the one extreme. And then I've seen the other where people are just very naive in getting the, you know, different touch points, and it's almost like it's way too shallow. People are not
Mm.
thinking about who's got to make the decisions at what point, um, and how we're going to know that we are successful each time, at each point. Mm.
Yeah, that's the challenge is the balance, how to balance the breadth with the depth, right? So it's um either people go too far on the breadth, like all these different tasks or activities or journey that we have, or they focus on one area and they just go deep and they don't, they miss the big picture. Um, and so the signal here again, like I use the idea the word visuals or signals intentionally because again, the visual gives you an indication or a signal. So you could the signal I give some examples here, like signal here, what's missing in this whole journey, but the signal that you're pointing to is like how do we balance breadth with depth, right? So, or do we have enough of the user activities at this point, and we want to just go deeper now in one of the areas so that we can discuss the decision points, the dependencies, things that we need to address. Um, so what is when we look at a visual, as all of the visual facilitators here know, they usually when we look at something or visually, you know, at some point, the more we look at it, the more we see things in a different way, right? So people may draw something or see this user story map and they come back the next day and they realize that, oh, okay, some things that we missed here, let's continue to build on this. But if the ideas are still stuck in their head, they will never be able to identify the missing gaps or have the conversations that you're pointing to, Amanda. Any other uh, comment from the group? All right. All right, maybe we'll wrap it up here and have some questions. So the visual signals, again, we talked about Kanban, which basically focus on the signal of flow, right? Flow is um, how are things moving in the system, from one state to the next. Like, for example, to do, doing, done. That's kind of like a very basic flow. We have something that is in the backlog we need to do, and then now it's in the doing column, and now it's done. Um, Make work visible. That's really the essence of um, visualization, or whether it's like, drawing things or illustrating things or using a Kanban board is to make things visible so we can highlight where we are stuck. So the next point, surface blockers. We talked about empathy mapping, perspective, getting perspective from the participants or the audience. We have say and do, and think and feel, right? So one is observable. You observe what people say, you observe what people do. You don't really know what they think and feel, but you can infer from what they say and do. And then impact mapping has these four different questions: the why, the who, the how, and the what. And then the last here technique is the user story mapping with the user journey. The breadth and the depth, the shared understanding as a group. How do we align on the big picture? So a question for the group here, like which one in in these tools, and I know some of you already use some of them or all of them, but which one would you be curious to find more about or to wanted to try in your next engagement or workshop?
I'll go first if that's all right. So I keep cards as a way of remembering different methods. So I'm definitely going to be using empathy mapping, impact mapping, and user story mapping. And Salah, before you forget, I think we're actually looking at maybe a fifth visual signal right in front of us here.
The fifth visual signal.
Yeah, that looks like a mind map to me, which isn't something that you explicitly
Yeah,
said,
yeah, absolutely.
but there it
That's
is.
there it is. Um, yeah, so impact map is kind of like a mind map. I think that's where it came from.
Mhm.
But yeah, visual. If you're how many use Miro or Mural or some sort of a digital? Okay. So again, like there are a lot of different templates. You don't even have to build things from scratch. You can just find a template and start to think about how you might, what's the right tool for this particular group. Um, and again, at the end, how do I get them from this, right? From this here to this? What will help the group move from we all agree, but they're agreeing on different things to we all agree and they're all looking at the same thing, right? So that's kind of the work that we do as facilitators. Um, so these are references. Everything that I mentioned here um, has its own sort of uh, additional reading, if you will. You can from the Kanban Pocket Guide. That's like a very short read, but there's also the more like the user story book or the game storming book or the impact mapping. Also, there's a book about that. So every one of those techniques has its own sort of method and framework and more to it than what I just went over in the last 60 minutes or less.
That's great stuff.
So, any thoughts or questions or final takeaways?
Okay, well, before we close, let's give Salah a big thank you very much. It's great to have you. And with that,
Thank
I am
you.
going to go ahead and stop the recording. Salah, hang out just for a second for us,
Yep.
and we'll see you at the next one.
All right. Thanks, everyone.